Hi everyone, Queeveen here from the comfort of my kitchen. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the sunset for autumn, but we're mostly going to be looking at it from the North Pole. So we'll start with sunset here in late September, and we can see the sun going down. We know that the sun goes under the horizon before the sky gets truly dark. If we get rid of all of our trees and buildings here and just take a look at a perfectly flat horizon, we can see there that the sun is under it, or just above it still. We'll go a little bit later. There we go. The sun under the horizon and the sky is still plenty bright. Really, there's a little bit of an optical illusion going on here because the air bends light, and especially close to the horizon, we're looking through quite a lot of atmosphere here. So even though the sun appears to be above the horizon, we'll get that a little bit more centered. So the sun clearly above the horizon, we can see some sunspots there as well. If we get rid of the atmosphere, it jumps under the horizon, or nearly under the horizon, and with the atmosphere out of the way, we can see a little bit of the corona, that kind of fluffiness of the sun's magnetic field. So down here, the disk of the sun itself, is definitely under the horizon. We can see it's under that line, and if we bring back our atmosphere, it hops back up again. The atmosphere also spreads out the light of the sun, so even when the sun appears to be under the horizon, even allowing for the distortion of the atmosphere, the sky remains pretty bright. And it will stay quite bright for a while, especially here in the northern hemisphere, high on the planet, coming into wintertime. It takes a while for the sun to set. We can see there's still some orange glow there quite a bit later, even though the rest of the sky is getting dark. This is down to the tilt. The sun goes under the horizon at an angle. So even though it is under the horizon, it takes a while for it to drop further under the horizon. It's going down at sort of an angle. If we hop up to the North Pole, as high up as we can, and then I'll change this to get us all the way up to the North Pole. Once we're directly at the North Pole, there we go. There's the sun just under the horizon, and we'll stick with a perfectly flat horizon, or just above it, just above the horizon. If we move through days there, we can see the height changing because the height of the sun is getting lower as we move closer and closer to wintertime. The sun is going to set earlier. But this is the interesting thing about the North Pole. Of course, the sun, when you're at the North Pole, the sun will stay above the horizon for the entire summer, and it will go under the horizon for the entire winter, with a bit of a twilight glow in between. So we can see the sky here in September is still bright. The sun is still up for the entire day. We're just really coming to the equinox here on the 22nd. So we'll stop that whizzing around. We'll go a little bit further forward. A couple of days further forward, so the sun is under the horizon. We can see that the sun is definitely under the horizon there on the 25th. So just to make sure, we're at the North Pole, so we don't really have to worry about time zones or anything. It's giving us this particular time, but it's saying minus two hours from UTC. Of course, it doesn't matter too much. Staying focused on the sun here, we'll move through time, and the sun is completely under the horizon. We'll go a little bit further. The sun is completely under the horizon there on the 24th, with the atmosphere distorting things. If we pull ourselves back up, oh, a bit of a glitch there, that's okay. The sun is completely above the horizon, just touching the horizon. We'll go a little bit closer. There we go, that's close enough. Just touching the horizon there on the 23rd. But if we get rid of the atmosphere, completely below the horizon. So the sun sets for the North Pole a little bit earlier than the 23rd if there's no atmosphere. If we're just accounting for the position of the sun, yeah, it's really setting there around the 22nd. But with the distortion of the atmosphere, apologies for the glitches. Yeah, just into the 23rd. It's completely set without the atmosphere. With the atmosphere, we have to wait a little bit longer for the 24th or 5th before the sun is completely under the horizon. But that is the sun going down. And because of the way it works at the North Pole, once the sun is set, well, the sun is set. It's not going to come back up. It's not going to get higher again. It's just going to keep getting lower and lower and lower as nighttime slowly sets in. Now, this is the view fixed on the sun, rotating sort of to compensate for the fact that the Earth is rotating to remain fixed on the sun. We can see the moon whizzing past there. So we are moving through time pretty quickly, and we can see darkness slowly starting to set in. Of course, the sun is drifting under the horizon at an angle, I guess almost a spiral if we weren't stabilizing for the tilt of the Earth. So we can see it's not really, well, it got quite dark, I guess, a little bit earlier in November there. But we can see that there's twilight for really almost the entire month of October. We can see it's starting to get dark there in early October, and then there's still a little bit of an orange-yellow glow even as we get towards the end of the month. So the sun is setting for the North Pole. Really, the sun is setting for the North Pole in just a couple of days, or given the date that this video will be posted, the sun will have just set if we're not allowing for the atmosphere, and it will set within a day if we are allowing for the atmosphere. If we get rid of the stabilization, if we stop locking onto the sun and just take a more normal view of the sky, we will keep it completely flat. Of course, Antarctica, or the North Pole, the Arctic is reasonably flat. It doesn't have as many mountains because, of course, it's not a continent. The Arctic, the North Polar ice cap, is really just ice floating on top of the ocean. So from here, we're going to move forward, and we can see the glow of the sun moving around us. Of course, this is down to the Earth turning, and as we speed it up, it does look a little bit strange, but we can see it slowly starting to darken there as we come into October, and that twilight will stay with us right into the middle of October and a little bit later. So this event, I'm going to lock back onto something just so it's not so odd looking, just so there isn't things flying around and around. If we lock onto the sun, then it'll stay in the same apparent position as we move through time. So there we go. This phenomenon, the sun setting for the North Pole, for the last time, the sun is setting for the North Pole just in a couple of days, and it's not going to come back up again for months. That was suggested by a commenter on my website, queevinscontent.ie. So all of the videos that I make have a post about them on my website, queevinscontent.ie, and on the website it is essentially everything that I say in the video written down with a couple of clarifications, any corrections that are necessary. We can see the sun here reaching its highest for the summer. When the sun is at its highest, of course, if we move through time without the sun stabilized, we'll see that it stays quite high in the sky. And of course, quite high in the sky, this is still low in the sky. It's much higher. It's the highest it's going to get at the North Pole. But of course, that's still significantly lower than everywhere else on Earth when the sun is at its highest for those subjective locations. However, this is higher than the sun gets, for example, for wintertime here in Ireland. Soon the sun in the middle of winter will be quite low for us here in Ireland. Of course, not quite as low as it is currently getting for anyone who is at the North Pole. But taking a look at this was suggested by a commenter on my website that mentioned the fact that the sun would be setting and talked about the effects that that would have, because of course the sun setting for the North Pole here, it's going to cause the temperature to go down. The North Pole is in nighttime for months and months and months, which causes the temperature to drop, and that massive cold air in northern winter cools a lot of the surrounding area as well. If the tilt wasn't so drastic, the effect would be quite different. The tilt of the Earth is the reason that we have the seasons the way that we have them. If we were less tilted, there would be far, far less seasonality. And you can see, particularly here in the Northern Hemisphere, less so in the Southern Hemisphere. There's plenty of ice still. There is still a bit of ice on the land of the Northern Hemisphere. So those land masses cool down, and that causes huge, huge swings in temperature, more so than you'd have in places that are near water, with the moderating effect of the water. Of course, Antarctica itself being a huge land mass sees huge, huge drops in temperature. We're going to come down a little bit to still very far north latitudes. So we'll go a little bit further north than Iceland, a little bit further north than Alaska, but still quite a few degrees, as you can see here, 15 or so degrees away from the North Pole. So that's going to put the sun back up in the sky. We'll move forward, of course, we're after going back a month, so we'll move back a little bit closer to the current date, and we'll move forward to that date. Here we go. The sun would have set, just about set, for that date. And we can see that that's the highest it reaches during the day. It drops under for nighttime and comes back up again. So the northern latitudes that are still not quite at the North Pole, but still in the northern circle, the Arctic Circle, they're still going to be experiencing a night and a day, at least for another little while. But as we move closer and closer into winter, here we go, we will come to a point where the sun stops rising. So we can see it there, truly setting, really producing nighttime, really causing darkness. And then here, it just about comes up. We'll zoom in and see if it's actually crossing the horizon here. Not at all. So it has stopped coming up that we can see there by the time we get into November. So this is, yeah, we seem to have gone very far back in time, but it shouldn't matter too much. The differences in the sunset at the North Pole and not as northerly latitudes, a little south of the North Pole, but still in the Arctic Circle, it does, thanks to the tilt of the Earth, as well as the obvious effect of the seasons, it has the possibly more dramatic, or at least equally dramatic effect of causing these very strange lengths of the day, making the day incredibly short or incredibly long, or in the case of the actual North Pole itself, really just one long day and one long night when you're completely up at the North Pole. But here we are back to a location where the sun is going to stay above the horizon, or at least come above the horizon for every part of the year, even if it doesn't sink particularly far under the horizon in the middle of winter. But we'll get back to that once we're into the middle of winter. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do like it. And if you like this kind of content, then please subscribe to this channel. And you can also check out my website, queevinscontent.ie, where you can read this information written down. If there's anything you'd like to see in the sky, then make sure you comment it here on my website or anywhere else. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you back here next time.